When I was in 6th grade, I was in band, clarinet. I wanted to play saxophone, but Grandpa had a clarinet, so that's what it ended up being. The band instructor was a middle-aged woman who I'm going to refer as Miss Frond. I'm watching Bob's Burgers while writing this, so to protect her identity. Anyways, I didn't have a lot of friends, so I had a lot of extra lessons after school. After a while, she started offering me extra lessons at her house. Even then, that made me uncomfortable, and I refused. She was pretty persistent though, and would offer at least once a week. Eventually, I just stopped going back for extra lessons. Anyhow, one day, Miss Frond announced that we had been invited to be in the Christmas parade downtown. Awesome, that's great. The school is literally a year old. It's great for exposure, and best of all, it's fun for the kids. We were so excited. We all had extra rehearsals, and the school made sure we had whatever we needed. Permission slips were signed, and everything went perfectly. The day of the parade, we all meet at our designated area. As we get dropped off, Miss Frond tells the parents where to pick us up at the end, and she and some parade officials are the ones watching over us after they leave. The parade starts, and everything goes smoothly, at least from my perspective. I was so nervous, there could have been a 5-float pileup, and I wouldn't have noticed. At the end, everybody gets picked up, and I'm the last, left alone with Miss Frond. Miss Frond immediately grabs my hand after the last kid is out of sight and tells me I can call my mom from her house, and she starts booking it, me in tow. I had very little experience being on my own and didn't know how to act in this kind of situation, so despite the fact that I had recently been uncomfortable around her, I went along. Looking back, it probably didn't look that unusual to anyone because she wasn't tall and I really shot up in 6th grade, so it's not like I was being dragged. I kept up pretty well. I couldn't tell you where in particular she took me, but it was definitely further out than where everyone else was parked. Her car is the only one in sight and she starts a beeline towards it. It was one of those dark blue-green SUVs that pretty much everyone had in the late 90s. Suddenly, I hear my name being yelled behind me. I turn and see my mom panting and sprinting towards us. Miss Frond's grip tightens and she speeds up. Mom yanked me from Miss Frond's grip and without a word took me to her car and we went home, where she proceeded to fawn over me, which was confusing because I was pretty much ignored 99% of the time. I had no idea what just happened. I never saw Miss Frond in school or heard anything about her ever again. I don't even know her first name to look her up, and my family never spoke about it. I hope this belongs here. I'm not sure because there's been no actual encounter with someone yet. I don't know, but I'm going to post anyway because I really want to get this off my chest and maybe hear some other people's thoughts. I live in a small house with 8 people in total. It's quite a large old Victorian style house. We're all students, but as it's summer, people have started to move out. For the last week or so, there's only been 3 of us in the house. Myself, my boyfriend, and another housemate. With our house being so full of people, it's easy to put strange things happening down to it being any one of those 7 other people. But now there's only 3 of us. I'm becoming increasingly paranoid that there's someone living in our house that shouldn't be. I'm going to try and structure the events that make me think so as best I can now. 1. Above our shower, there's an attic. You can see the little black attic hatch, which has always been a crack open since we moved in. I know it's been open because my boyfriend would get creeped out by it and tell me so, but recently the crack shut. Now, this house has very high ceilings. I'm only 5'2.5", so there's no way I can reach up there. My other housemate isn't much taller, and although my boyfriend is more so, he probably still isn't tall enough. And that hatch creeps him out too much for him to go opening it. I've asked, so there's that. 2. 4 out of 8 people in our house smoke, so there's often tobacco and rolling papers lying around the front room or kitchen. For a long time now, since maybe January or so, we've been finding these really badly rolled cigarettes in the mornings. My boyfriend and I would come downstairs in the morning and we'd find one of these shitty cigarettes rolled and just sitting in the tobacco. Like somebody had rolled it and then decided it wasn't good enough to smoke and just left it for us to find. At first, we had a laugh about it, assuming it was one of our housemates who smokes only when drinking and was attempting to roll secretly because of embarrassment. But then that housemate left, which brings us on to number 3. My boyfriend bought me a lollipop a few days earlier, one of those oversized swirly ones, and he and I were standing in the kitchen with cigarettes one day when I put the lollipop on the fridge. Cut to a little later, we go back and see that yet another one of these badly rolled cigarettes has appeared. Only this time, it has been half smoked and stubbed out on the lolly. Neither I nor my boyfriend would have stubbed out a cigarette on a lolly he bought me. We were the only people in the house at the time, or should have been. 4. Smaller and not exactly scary, but still another odd example of something happening. Our recycling bins were an absolute mess. We came back from the shop, my boyfriend and I, one day, and they were all neatly stacked and tidy. Weird. 5. Now, this is the thing that has weirded me out the most out of everything for some reason. My boyfriend and I had been away for the weekend, and one of our housemates was just coming back the day before we were. He said the house was creeping him out a bit, so he turned off all the lights on the day he was there alone and just stayed in his room until we got back. My boyfriend and I get home, find the other housemate, and start chatting, and mentions of odd happenings like those mentioned above came up. So we're all a bit confused, maybe a bit creeped out, but more intrigued than anything. Whatever, don't think about it. All 3 of us chat about other stuff and end up going to bed at the same time. My boyfriend and I were awake in bed for a while, so we would have heard my housemate leaving his room if he had done so, but we didn't. The next morning, I head downstairs, the first one up, and I noticed something straight away that was not there the night before. Tiny little barcode stickers from some nail art sticker sheets I had were all stuck in a sort of lined up shape on the sofa. Lots of them, just in this sort of hourglass number 8 sort of shape. First thing I do is get my housemate and ask him if he's been downstairs. He says no, asks me why, and I show him the stickers. He's as weirded out and as intrigued as I am. My boyfriend isn't up yet, but just to check, I go and ask him if it was him. Nope. They're still there. I can get a picture if anyone really wants it. We've tried taking them off, but they're little bastards to pull off. They leave marks on the sofa. Bearing in mind, we have a damage deposit on this house we all want back, so it's safe to say nobody in our house who wants that money back is going to damage furniture like that. All of these things are alongside banging and sounds like footsteps or taps, things being turned on or things being dragged across the floor. The sounds are worrying enough, but I always put it down to it being an old house or one of the many other people we know living there, or even the neighbors. Another point of interest, which I only realized lately. My boyfriend lost his house keys a good while back. Anyone could have picked up these keys and found out where we lived. I'm currently at my parents' house, but the more I stay at my own house, the more it seems the only explanation for these things happening is there is someone living in our attic, and it scares the shit out of me. So much that I refuse to check. This is a story about a man named John that I met while working retail. John is an older white man in his mid-50s, well-dressed, well-spoken, with shoulder-length steel gray hair and a low ponytail tied back. At the time, I was working at a farm and a pet supply store. I was called over to help a customer look at electric fences and shock collars for dogs, which I am steadfastly against, but I had to help the customer. I asked him what I could help him with, and he said he was interested in an electric fence for his dog since he had a cabin in the woods and wanted to make sure they didn't get away. He said, "Oh yes, I'm looking to use this shock collar. Maybe on you." Thoroughly creeped out, I tried to laugh it off and tell him no thank you. I finally got him someone who knew more than I did and thought that would be the end of it. Of course, it wasn't. Next time he saw me, he said, "I've been looking for you. I bought what I wanted. I didn't know what you said. I wanted to slap you the next time I saw you." I told him if he ever hit me, I'd absolutely hit him back. So then a few days later, he told me he would really like to take me out to lunch one day. I politely declined. He would come into the store and look for me. I'd usually see him before he saw me. This one day that I saw him first, I hid until I thought he left, but no. He found me back in my department. He said, "Just so you know, I'm not dressed up for you today. I have a meeting with the bank, but if I didn't, I'd be taking you out for lunch. You know, I can tell you dyed your hair. You look so beautiful, but that doesn't mean anything to you, does it? It might mean something if you liked me back." He was never banned from the store, even after one of my managers heard him say these things to me, but my coworkers would tell me when he was in the store and help me get away from him until he left. I haven't seen him since I quit, and I'm so thankful. So my sister called my family the other day and told my parents about a strange man that she and her friend came across. They have been there for about a week and were walking in the redwoods when a man appeared out of practically nowhere and startled them. My sister claimed that he looked completely normal and was even kind of handsome, in her opinion, but he gave off a creepy vibe pretty quickly. He apparently began asking them weird questions like who they were and what they were doing out in his woods. After they explained that they were just out exploring, he quickly got annoyed and said they were liars. My sister and her friend began to walk away quickly as they assumed he was probably on drugs, but he walked after them and said more weird stuff. She says he even asked them to kiss each other because he knew they were lesbian lovers. And they're not lesbians, by the way. My sister's friend apparently turned around and screamed at him to leave them alone. My sister said this is where he got scary as hell. She says he gave my sister and her friend the most evil and hateful look she's ever seen in her life, and he said this in response. "You two are such disrespectful bitches. I've killed a few of you over the last few years, and I'd love to add you both to my count." My sister and her friend didn't even hesitate and both booked it right after he said that. They heard him chasing after them and screaming at them. My sister says that she couldn't make out much of what he said, other than that he would chop them up, and a few other threats. They both made it safely out of the woods, and they didn't see him anywhere. They got in their car and sped back to the town they were staying in. Then they called the police to file a report and headed to another area, and we'll be heading home soon. I'm scared and pissed off that some creep did this to them. So I'm going out camping where this happens, and it reminded me of the incident. When I was about 10 or 11, my dad used to bring me fishing and hiking nearly every weekend to try and help me cope with some bad shit that happened recently. It was just us, always was at the time. We used to play music really loud with the windows down and drive up the mountain. I can still vividly remember driving on that day. We parked by the lake and unloaded our stuff. Then I helped my dad get the pole set up. It didn't take long for me to get bored waiting for a bite. I noticed some frogs or tadpoles, so I asked Dad if I could go look for tadpoles. He said, yeah, just stay close. Dope. Now, I'm a 10-year-old little blonde girl in a bathing suit walking along the edge of the lake, watching the water. To the normal person, that doesn't sound appealing. Unfortunately, I was an early bloomer and was getting curvy, which I knew was noticeable thanks to the adults that had already sexualized me by that time. I knew to be wary of strangers. Unfortunately, I was also a stupid kid. So I'm not paying attention and somebody says hi. I glanced up and I remember there being a rock about 20 feet out in the lake. There were 3 or 4 guys sitting on it and 3 or 4 more in the water. I don't know for sure, and I couldn't see all the way around the rock formation. There could have been more that I missed. Now, maybe my naivety stems from the fact that they were about the same age as my brothers, but I wasn't really concerned. In fact, I didn't give a shit. I didn't look at them again after I said hello because you guessed it, tadpoles. They made small talk with me, which I don't remember as clearly, but I do remember them asking me what kind of dog I liked. I answered, like an idiot. So I say husky, and they say, oh wow, we have a husky at our cabin. Want to come meet it? I said, yeah, let me go ask my dad, and turned around and walked away. I didn't walk away because I was afraid or weirded out. I literally just knew I had to ask my dad first. I never wandered off too far without telling him. So I get back to where we were fishing, and I say something dumb like, hey dad, I met these guys about my brother's age and they said I can meet their husky, so can I go? And he said, the heck? No, like a normal person. But this is my dad and he's overprotective. He's walked through a double panes door because I was missing, asleep in a closet, and stood between me and a bear more than once. He's a great dad, but I digress. So he asks more questions while standing up. He tells me to show him where I met them. I still don't consider anything as wrong. I figure he just wants to talk to him and I still get to meet a dog. I lead him back to the spot, but they're all gone. I'm confused and my dad's annoyed, and I had to stay with him for the rest of the fishing trip. I'm 28 now and didn't realize how bad this could have been if I had just gone until recently. I genuinely hadn't considered it. But now I think about it as the time I narrowly escaped possibly getting trafficked because of the age-old ask your parents rule. This was an experience I had alongside my best friend in high school. This was about 2006, maybe 2007, in rural upstate New York. We met in 3rd grade and are still friends to this day. We're both 27 now. Let me give you some background information. My friend B and I became instant friends when we met in 3rd grade and were inseparable. We frequented each other's homes so much so that her mom set up her guest room as my room. I had toys, clothes, and pictures. I mean, everything I needed was there. I was family. Pictures of B and me hung up on the walls of the home owned by her very proud mother, Shelley. Shelly always wanted 2 daughters and loved me so much that she considered me her second daughter. Now on to the meat of the story. Again, this incident took place when B and I were sophomores in high school. Her mother was divorced and dated a few different men, meeting some off sites like eHarmony. She had been speaking to a man for a few weeks, gushing about how manly and charming he was. She was really excited and always showed us their profiles before she decided to go on an actual date with one of these men. She always would say, "I need my daughter's stamps of approval." One night she called us to her room and showed us this man that she had been talking to. His profile was simple, as one would imagine for a middle-aged man in 2007 on eHarmony. The headline read, "Looking for a strong mother." I made a joke about his odd placement for caps and just how strange a way it was to start out, but we moved forward. It told of his metalwork background, his love of cold steel, and his work in a foundry that keeps his icy heart just warm enough. I was honest and told her it sounded off, but he was handsome, sporting black, well-groomed hair, a beard, a strong jaw, ice blue eyes, and a relatively fit body for a 40-something-year-old male. I did stress about the weird vibe, and then B joked about how Shelly always picked out the antisocial ones, and we laughed, knowing this wasn't wrong. Shelly's brought some weird stories home, but what do you expect from meeting men online? We told her to go for it, so they planned on dinner. It was a haul for him, about a 2-hour drive. He was driving to our location where they would then take one car into town. B and I helped Shelly pick out her outfit, helped her with her hair and makeup, and then went back upstairs so she could have some time to herself before the long night. We headed up the stairs where B and I were painting a wall in her room, just listening to music and cutting up. He just let himself in the house like no big deal and just came upstairs without saying a word. No knocking, no doorbell. The dogs didn't even bark. Nothing. So we get spooked, jump and scream, and shit our pants a little when we hear a man start talking behind us. We don't know how long he had been in the house, and we don't know how long he stood behind us without speaking, but when he did speak, we shook. Well. I didn't know I was getting a 2-for-1 deal," he said quietly in a gravelly low voice. He chuckled as we stood there in shock of the stranger in her room. He sauntered over to us, like a man on a Sunday walk. The smell of cigarettes filled the room, as if Rod Sterling himself was standing in the corner, explaining our situation to the audience for our own personal episode of The Twilight Zone. Right then, I noticed how much this guy looked like the guy in the pictures Shelly showed us, except he had salt and pepper, not jet black hair. And his eyes were not ice blue, but black. Not brown. Black. It looked like this guy was 100% pupil. "Are you..." I was interrupted by Shelly shouting. "Who got hurt?" She must have thought we were horsing around and one of us got hurt. This was normal for us because we goofed around a lot. She was jolted at the sight of this man blocking her from us. He turned around just as soon as she reached the top of the stairs and held his arms out and said, in a way less low tone than he used earlier, "Shelly, you look beautiful." I knocked and nobody answered. "I hope it's okay I let myself in. These are your girls. They're beautiful, like their mommy." I'll never forget how he said mommy. It felt dirty. B and I both side-eyed each other and stepped down off our step ladders. We were both very in tune with each other. If I felt weird, I knew she did, and we both felt the odd air of the room. Shelly glanced away from him and at us, who were behind him, looking at her with wide eyes and both kind of shaking our heads side to side in disbelief. Shelly looked back to him. This exchange only took a few seconds, but seemed like an eternity. She forced a smile at him and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Next time just ring the bell and I'll come open the door." He nodded and walked towards her with open arms and hugged her like they had been the oldest of friends. She looked at us as they hugged and just kind of rolled her eyes to show us what she thought of his excuse. She proceeded to tell him that it was not appropriate as she led him down the stairs. We heard him apologize over and over. B and I instantly ran to our phones. We agreed to text her mom what he just said to us so we could tell her without him knowing. We hit send, and about 10 minutes later we heard footsteps up the stairs. It was Shelly, and she shut the door behind her and asked us if we were okay. She hugged us and told us she was sorry he made us feel uncomfortable. She explained to us that he said we reminded him of his girls and didn't mean to scare us. We nodded and then said they were leaving out for the date. We hugged her and said to be safe and we would see her soon. As she headed down the stairs, B and I looked at each other. We both knew that something wasn't right, but we're both speechless from the good scare we received from this dark man just about 15 minutes prior. We heard them walking and talking, heading towards the front door. A few minutes later, Shelly shouted up the stairs that she loved us. We yelled back that we loved her, and then the door shut. We instantly started talking over each other, saying the same things. B spoke over me. He laid that charm on so thick as soon as he saw Mom. B exclaims further, and did you see his eyes? What the heck was that? He looked so much like the guy from the pictures, but not exactly. We both concurred on our feelings about the stranger, his scent, his demeanor, and his voice. He was like something out of a classic stranger danger advert. Again, we agreed to text Shelly how we felt. She thanked us and told us it seemed to be going well, and she would let us know that she was safe every hour. B and I were just freaked out, and even more so that Shelly was not. It was like a weird spell he casted on her. It was odd, but we wanted to think the best for Shelly as she was excited about this guy. She texted us every hour until she got home. Her last text said, "I'm okay, but officially freaked out and coming home now. Be home soon." We got freaked and paced around until we saw headlights pull into the driveway. It had been about 5 hours since she left and about an hour since that last text. We were inside with the lights off, watching through the side window, trying to not be seen when the motion sensor light flooded the yard and light fell onto the driveway. A truck flew into the driveway. The passenger side door flung open before the truck was at a full stop, and Shelly's feet were on the pavement just as fast. She waved to the driver and kind of jogged to the door, wide-eyed. She reached the front door, turned and waved the truck off. She had her house key ready in the hand that she wasn't waving with, and she unlocked the door and slid inside the safety of the house. "Keep the lights off. Let's go upstairs," Shelly said as she locked the 2 deadbolts in the chain, not once looking at us. We headed up the stairs behind her. We walked into B's room and looked out the window, down to the truck, still in park out front with the lights on and engine running. As we all stared at the truck, Shelly told us the ordeal she went through. Long story short, he had made reservations at the wrong restaurant, so he suggested they go buy some food and have a picnic-style dinner at a local park. Shelly didn't do well outdoors. She was an office woman, so she declined. However, he said, "I just drove so long to get here," and then hit her with, "You kind of owe me." And Shelly said that made her feel bad, knowing he drove 2 hours. So when he mentioned that he had a vacation home he could cook for her at close by, she agreed. She said they got to the house and it was nice enough. A log cabin near Bethel, New York, only about 35 minutes from our town. Shelly said he kept talking about how easy it was to get her alone. He also kept saying he liked strong mommies because they have such fight, but she caved. This made her skin crawl. This wasn't the man she thought it was. This also wasn't the man in the picture, and Shelly started to slowly realize this. Shelly then said she asked for a ride home due to her feeling ill. He wasn't the happiest, but he complied and stopped cooking and started looking for the keys she knew he had in his pocket. He then started asking her about our girls, referring to myself and B. This freaked Shelly out so bad, she said she was going to get someone to get her, and that he didn't like he found his keys instantly. Once they were out of the house and in the truck would not start, so they had to move to his work truck. Shelly was visibly shaken and wouldn't take her eyes off the truck in the driveway as she spilled the story out post-haste. She said there was a garage and he said they had to walk around the house to hop in the work truck. She said she felt she had no choice but to play it cool and just agree to go. She hopped out and walked around the house, and there indeed was another garage with a truck in it. The same truck that we were all currently staring at was just sitting in the driveway. "It smelled like bleach and metal," Shelly whispered. She told us on the way home he just kept asking about us. What did we do that she didn't like? What got us spankings? What were the naughty things we got in trouble for? What would she do without us? And the one question to scare you out of your pants as a parent: would you sacrifice yourself for our girls? Shelly said she stared at him in awe and disbelief, and then he just laughed. She got more and more concerned as she noticed her surroundings in the back of the truck she was riding home in. There were what she thought were chains in a bucket sitting on a desk that was drilled into the floor, a duffel bag, and very large metal objects that she wasn't too sure of. This is when he started to pull out pictures of his little flip phone that he had of us. He must have found Shelly's Facebook, and he took pictures of our pictures and had them on his phone, waving it around, telling Shelly what a good, strong mommy she had been to us, and she should be proud of what she had accomplished. By this time, they were pulling into the driveway, and Shelly was done with his shit. She was just about finished when we saw the truck lights turn off. Shelly immediately picked up the phone and dialed the sheriff and told him quickly there was an unwelcome person outside our home. Being in such a small town, the sheriff not only went to school and graduated with Shelly, but also lived only 3 doors down. Just as we saw this guy getting out of his truck with a duffel bag, We saw the sheriff whip up behind him. This man panicked and literally threw his duffel into his truck and tried to back into the sheriff to get out. When he realized he was blocked from the rear, he went through the yard. We could not believe our eyes. The truck peeled out, taking some of the lawn with it. The sheriff came to the door to check on us and told us he had units down the road waiting for him. We all shared a good collective cry and rejoiced in our safety. It did, however, create some paranoia issues in the next couple of weeks, due to the fact we didn't know how long he was in the house when he just let himself in. Did he put cameras anywhere? Did he mess with food in the house to hurt someone? I mean, it was bad, but we worked through it. We never heard anything about him getting caught, and we did occasionally receive eerie messages on Facebook, 2 of which we knew were him, but we had put that out of our minds. We haven't really heard anything from or about him since about 3 months after the incident, when the last message was received. It's been about 11 years since the incident, but we still talk about it when we can. On a rainy night in the era before cell phones, I was 18, walking a very long way home from work, and I foolishly accepted a ride home from a strange man. Small town girl living in her lonely world, and I had just gotten off a double shift. He was elderly and acted genuinely concerned for me, and I saw a Bible in the back seat. Probably safe, right? The car was old and broken down, and he had to get out to open the door for me. It took him a while, as he had trouble walking with a bum leg. He told me the passenger door didn't open from the inside. I immediately felt weird, but years of nice girl training told me, he's gone to so much trouble, so don't say no. We chatted for a while, and he politely complimented my uniform and my hair, and told me I looked like his late wife, and that her spirit must have led him to help me get home. It sounded very sweet the way he told it. The conversation turned to if I was still in school and what my hobbies were like, and gradually turned to whether or not I was on my period. Which was rude, but he acted like it was going to be the punchline of a joke, so I laughingly asked him why he would want to know. He said very calmly, because if you're fertile, we should start trying for a family right away. Oh shit. He said that God had kept him lonely for years, but now I looked so much like his late wife, it was clear I was meant to be his. So he could start life over again and finally have lots of children like his wife was unable to do. He grabbed my hand and kissed it and said, "I can't wait to show you our new bed." I told him I forgot something at work, and he told me I could get it tomorrow. I told him I needed to pee, and he said I could hold it until we got home. He wasn't going to let me out. We kept talking about how things were different back then, and how men are the head of the household, and women are to follow their fathers and their husbands, and God says this and God says that. He talked about his wedding day and how his wife's father had given her to him. So I blurted out, "You're going to get my father's permission to marry me before taking me home, right? God would want that, right? You need to do that because otherwise we would be living in sin, and the marriage bed is not holy," which I remembered from many days of church sermons. He got offended then and said he knew the Bible better than I did, and of course he knew to ask my father for permission. I told him that we couldn't live together in sin and we should go to my house before going home, and I reminded him that the street wasn't far. Still, trying to keep the conversation light and joking, I told him that's what a godly man would do, and he wholeheartedly agreed. Then we got to the street where I'd previously told him I lived. He asked which house was my parents'. I gave him a fake house number, far away from mine, and had him drop me off there. He wanted to come inside. I told him I needed to let my parents know about God sending me a husband before he could meet them. I said it would take a few days. Come back tomorrow. He said, "I'll give you a few minutes, but then we need to be on our way." I told him to drive around the block so I could have time to pack my clothes. He nodded and finally opened the car door. I ran to that house's door, waved to him until he drove away, then sprinted to my house, where I lived alone. Double bolted my door and put the couch in front of it that night. Never saw him again. I didn't call the police, though I wish I had. I moved in with my boyfriend a few days later, and I insisted on waiting at work until he could pick me up every night. I used to deliver packages in the mail for a company in the south. A lot of the daily routes were in the hills and woods. Last year, I had a route that was super deep in the country. I was used to back roads in the country now at this job at this point. There are some houses I stopped at where the driveway is super steep or some other shit. But for the most part, everybody was always super friendly out there. Country folk. Well, I had a delivery that was down this long gravel street. There were only a few houses on my journey to the house that my delivery was for. Still at this point, I'm totally fine. There are a ton of these types of roads out here. Well, I arrive at my destination. No mailbox, no driveway, no gravel. You can make out a little bit of a path that has been made from cars driving to the house. But I'm serious when I say a little bit. The driveway is maybe 250 yards long with the house at the end of it. I'm only sketched out because I'm in the woods and land is super unpredictable back here, meaning you never know when there's just a drop off. I'm in a huge box truck, so if one tire were to slip off the side, the whole thing would go down. So I'm driving literally probably less than a mile an hour, taking my time, being extremely cautious. As I'm making this drive back to the house, I start kind of checking out my surroundings. I pass a really old broken down truck that the ground has started to grow around. Again, super common back here. No big deal. As I get further and further down the driveway, I notice that I've probably passed about 4 satellite dishes, like cable dishes. I start approaching the house. This house from the outside looks like it is a Walter White Season 5 style cabin. It's a shack. I park and kind of just check out my surroundings. After about a minute, I was like, okay, I'm just going to deliver it and leave. I walk up to the front door of this cabin thing, and the front door has a large glass window in it. Not modern. Think old. Like a cabin that was built in the late 50s with no repairs. As I set the small package down in front of the door, I glance inside the house. The main room, which would be like a living room I'm guessing, is completely empty. The only things that are in this room are 2 foldable metal chairs, both unfolded. Both are facing a corner of the room, but nothing is in the corner. In the meantime, I'm trying to do my job with my right hand where I keep making very quick glances inside. From what I saw, there was nothing in that house. Nothing. It was a shell. The kitchen may have had old appliances in it, but I wasn't really paying attention to that part. My 6th sense kicked in, and my brain obviously said, this isn't right, so I turn around and start walking back to my truck, maybe 30 feet away. I take my hood off my head and take my hat off so I can have a full peripheral view around me. I immediately start looking to see where the closest neighbor's house is. I see a building up the hill just a tiny bit, but it honestly looked like it was on this guy's property. I'm sure this was my head playing major tricks on me, but as I'm walking back to my truck, I just feel a presence. I feel like it's hanging onto my back, getting heavier and heavier with every single step closer to the van I took. I jumped in my van, locked the doors, and I checked it back to make sure nobody was in there. What the heck? The driveway. I back out of this entire driveway while checking my surroundings everywhere. I make it back onto the road. As I'm driving down the road, maybe 40 feet away from this dude's entrance to the driveway, there's a trash bag in the middle of the street. It's open just a little bit. I slow down and it looks like there's a woman's sweater or something in there. Was that a kill room? Was someone or multiple people held hostage on that property? Something was up. I immediately contacted my buddy and told him about it. He suggested I go back and snap a few pictures. I agreed. About 5 minutes goes by and I make it back to the address and the trash bag is completely gone. I looked everywhere on the street and the side of the street. Completely gone. But get this, I always thought about how I never know what I'm delivering or who I'm delivering to. When I first landed this job, I remember thinking how crazy it would be if somebody was holding people hostage in their house, torturing them and ordering their food and house supplies online because they are afraid of leaving the house with the kidnapped people alone. That's all I could think about when dropping off this package. I left that job not even a week later for different reasons, but I did tell my boss and he assured me that he would contact the local police department and take that house off our normal route schedule. I never heard anything back about it. I'm aware that if the police went out there and found something or people, I would immediately be called in to tell them what I saw, so I'm going to assume that they went out to check it out and found nothing. But in the same sense, it makes me wonder about the trash bag immediately disappearing after I left. Did they realize that they messed up and I was going to say something, so they prepared for that? I don't know. I also have no clue what the address was or how to get there by memory to check it out for myself, but I think about that very often. And every single time I do, I get chills down my spine just because of the thought of the unknown. I recently went on a date with a guy from my school who I met on a dating app. He seemed super sweet and charming over text, so I agreed to go on a date with him. Especially after 2 friends told me they knew him from a class where he was generally a funny guy. We go to a small, pretty prestigious university, which also made me sure that he would be normal. He He was supposed to meet me at 6 to go on a picnic, but ended up picking me up at 8:30. He texted me to reschedule at 8 and ended up showing at that time. He drove me to his apartment and, although uncomfortable, I agreed to go in because of everything I already knew about him. The apartment was only lit with one candle and a small glowing light on the floor, which didn't add much. It was a multiple bedroom apartment that he lived in alone, which made it even more odd. We talked and ate some food, and he seems nervous and uneasy for the most of it. He suddenly switched the conversation to our deepest, darkest secrets and asked if I ever seriously thought about killing anyone. After I said no, he made up a story about being in the Navy and having to bomb a ship and killing 5 people. When I was unsure how to respond, he sort of just passed it off as a joke and said that he had seriously thought about killing someone else, his ex's current boyfriend. I was extremely uncomfortable at this point and wanted to leave, and he agreed to drive me home. Before we left, he said he wanted to show me something and pulled out a rifle that he pointed in my direction. When I got startled, he remained eerily calm and said he got it for hunting, but couldn't think of even killing an animal. We left, and I got back to my friend's place safely. Everyone I've told has been flabbergasted about how the date went, and I can't shake the feeling that something was off about him, and it's creeping me out. And to clarify, I mean like something more sinister. Any thoughts on this would be appreciated. This happened several years ago, but so much of it is still fresh in my mind. My husband, son, and I were visiting a local park with a great playground and a long paved trail next to a lake. Hubby would stay with my kiddo while he played, and I would walk the dog and listen to a podcast. This park was usually very busy, but this was early spring and the weather wasn't great. The sky was gray and the wind off the lake still had a nip to it. I didn't let that deter me. I had serious cabin fever and was ready to stretch my legs. I and my pup BB set off. It had been about 20 minutes when I noticed my dog acting strange. She was pulling on the leash and seemed anxious. At this point, I realized I was almost completely alone. Almost. I glanced back and there was 2 men, Man A and Man B, walking behind me at a pretty quick clip. There was nothing outwardly strange about them. I shrugged off my unease and told myself I was just being paranoid. I slowed a bit and let them pass me, which they did. I immediately felt better once they were well ahead of me. They were a ways away, but in my line of sight as I walked. Several minutes later they stopped, and Man A leaned in and whispered something in Man B's ear. Man B nodded and started walking ahead while Man A turned around and started walking back towards me. I found it weird but explained it away in my mind. Maybe he has to leave. Maybe he has to go to the bathroom, or maybe he's not feeling well. As he passed, we made eye contact, and as a reflex, I smiled and nodded at him. The smile I got back makes my skin crawl to this day, and looking back, I remember that my dog distinctly positioned herself between me and him. I kept walking for a while. I knew at this point I probably should have turned back, but I didn't. For the next 5 minutes or so, everything was fine. Then I realized I couldn't see Man B anymore. There was a bathroom right next to the trail, so he likely was in there. As I'm processing this, my dog is pulling on the leash and looking behind us. Man A is coming up fast, not quite running, but speed walking. I decided to sit down on a bench and be on the phone with my husband when he passed. I put him on speaker and made sure to loudly say, "Yeah, I'm turning around now and should be back shortly." At the moment, my dog, who truly is the friendliest dog in the world and will love anyone who will scratch her head behind the ears, lunged at this man, snarling and barking. She is part Norwegian Elkwood, so her bark is pretty jarring. She had never once done anything like this in the 6+ years I've had her. The man sidestepped and scurried away. As soon as he was far enough away that I thought I wasn't going to get tackled from behind, I got up and booked it all the way back to my husband. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was being paranoid and worked myself up over nothing. But I really believe if my dog doesn't like you, it's for a reason.